Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Astrology Now with astrologer Babula Clement and myself, Cheryl Gottschall. Hi, Babula.
Hi, Cheryl.
How you doing?
Oh, pretty good, all things considered, with all the madness going on around us.
I know. And here in Australia, of course, we're getting about to get a second round of floods, I think. So, Oh my goodness, yes, wet, wet, wet. So there's still some of that Piscean energy hanging around.
There is. Yeah, so even though Jupiter left Pisces, much to everyone's relief, particularly in this part of the world where it's been so wet,
Yeah.
Mars is still there and making an approach to Neptune. So once Mars leaves on the 25th of May, the only planet remaining in Pisces will be Neptune, and he's going to be there till about 2026. That's a slow-moving planet.
Goodness me, there's so many other things to work with in this lunar cycle too, which is the full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio coming up very soon, which we'll talk about. So yeah, why don't you start there, or is there somewhere else you want to start?
Yeah, well, there's so much to say once again, and May, we always knew May was going to be a big month, astrologically speaking, and in our own experience. So, so 2 weeks prior, of course, we had the solar eclipse at the new moon at 11 degrees of Taurus, conjunct Uranus. So that Uranus energy of that new moon solar eclipse kind of set the tone for this whole monthly lunar cycle and for the eclipse period for the next few months, actually, because it's an eclipse. We're smack in eclipse season through the whole of May. So it's a big month.
So eclipses they're about change, aren't they?
Huge. They're huge catalysts, triggers for big shifts, for big events to occur both in the world, like big things happen in the world during eclipse season, and also in our own life, inner and outer, internal shifts and big things moving in our life. And they're huge catalysts. It's like a lunar eclipse, which we're coming into now, is a full moon magnified by a lot, particularly because this one's, if I picked a figure out of the air, I was wanting to say 1,000, because this one is a total lunar eclipse.
Yeah.
The moon, so it's a full moon in Scorpio. It's a total eclipse. It's total because it's right on the nodes, the north and south node. And it's also what's in recent years started to be called a supermoon. And all that means is the moon is closer to the earth in her cycle. And so we can't see it here because our skies are just completely clouded over with big black rain clouds. So we can't see it. But if we could see it, she'd look incredibly big just because she's closer.
Yeah.
So it's all these factors mount up to this being a very, very potent, powerful full moon, sun in Taurus, opposite the full moon in Scorpio. And of course, Scorpio and Taurus are pretty full-on energies anyway. So
well, they're a little bit at odds with each other, aren't they? Because that sun in Taurus can be quite confident, but that moon in Scorpio, it's a bit insecure, always seeking security.
Yeah, well, both signs actually got quite a lot to do with security and issues around trust and so on.
In different ways.
They do. And signs opposite each other are kind of often at loggerheads, pushing up against each other or trying to pull away from each other. But they are connected, and they're also about how to, come to terms with each other and integrate and how to work together as a polarity. It's like male and female, different energies, very different.
Yeah.
There's a magnetic attraction, but often there's also a kind of repelling energy going on as well,
Yeah. So do you think it might be more accurate to say that Taurus sun is stable, whereas the moon in Scorpio is a bit unstable?
It's unstable because, that's true, because in Scorpio, we're talking about death and endings. And Taurus is going, I'm not having any of that. Things are going to remain just as I want them, you know, put them in place. They're going to stay there. Well, we know that Uranus has been in Taurus now since 2018, and stable is not a term we could use for the world since 2018. You know, stability, no. So it's really kicking up a storm in Taurus. And now this full moon is really highlighting. And the other important factor about this full moon is that when there's a total lunar eclipse, the sun and the moon in that opposite position are sitting right on the north and south nodes of the moon, which are very powerful karmic points. And this time, the moon, that full moon, is on the south node. So there's in Scorpio a sign of death and endings and cleansing and purification and purging and digging deep and dredging stuff up from the depths, you know, on the south node, the karmic path. So we're dealing with a lot of deep, deep, deep old stuff surfacing, and we'll be noticing it already.
So maybe things like secrets, the shadow, and maybe power struggles in relationships,
absolutely,
manipulation. That's sort of
all these things coming up, getting stirred up, getting triggered, and we think, oh, that won't happen to me, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in a situation, you know, in a conversation with someone or a circumstance, something happens, and all this stuff comes up like that, you know. It's very strong, it's very potent. And I had a taste of it yesterday, actually, and I won't go into the details, but my lovely little granddaughter had a bit of a meltdown, and she just had this massive eruption, and all this old stuff came out, and it was, and I'm grateful that I was able to just recognize what was happening, you know, and not try and shut it down. And after, with that big sort of emotional storm, she just went all soft and, you know, warm and affectionate. We had a lovely time after that, you know. So that's a very Scorpionic process, and that's the kind of energy field we're in. And I think the whole month of May with these big eclipses is a bit like that.
Bit of a sting comes out of nowhere, you know.
Well, it can be that, but you know, Scorpio, absolutely, the sting.
To ourselves, I mean, as well, not just to other people, but to ourselves, like,
exactly, that sting in the scorpion's tail. But a lot of it's got to do with transformative, you know, releases and expression of things we might have been holding on to. So it's very strong. So I think it's just good to sort of speak of those things, because people might be experiencing that even already, and during the eclipse, and in the days and weeks even following the eclipse, you know, these energies are still around very strongly. In fact, eclipse energies are really around for a few months after the eclipse.
Right.
But we seem to notice them very strongly during the season itself.
So
that's on the 16th, and for those of us in the eastern states of Australia, it's around 2:14, 2:15 in the afternoon, on Monday the 15th.
And I wanted to talk a little bit more about Scorpio, because last episode I said I'd bring some of the color into this as well.
Yes, fantastic.
So I was going through my old Aura Soma book. I don't know if you can hear it. I've lost my camera now. Where'd it go? There it is. And we're looking at this bottle here, which is clear over green. And like we were saying before earlier, that people often think of Scorpio as black, right? That, you know, like I was even thinking about wearing black. I thought, no, I just can't go there. But you know, it's not me. But this bottle here is called, now what was it called? No, it's called Change in the New Eon, which is really interesting because, you know, this is eclipse season, like you said, so we're talking about change happening. And green in the Aura Soma system represents the panoramic awareness. So it's like a rising up or stepping out of ourselves with the ability to see things from another person's perspective, and to understand another person's position as if it were our own, like we're stepping into their shoes, right? So it's it sort of like allows us to, instead of going down with all that scorpionic energy, this helps us rise up so that we don't get bogged down in all that. And we can, and when you rise up like that, you can let go of a lot of emotions because you do see things from other people's perspective too. And the green itself also represents spaciousness. And you think of green in nature, and it's like green fields and open spaces. And when you do all that, you can, you know, when you rise up above everything, you can see a direction more clearly and make good decisions, you know. So and one of the interesting things I was reading was that the emerald green of the heart in the heart chakra, which is linked to the earth, if you rearrange the letters of the word heart, it elegantly spells earth, which I hadn't
Yes.
before.
Isn't it incredible?
It is, it is. But because it's to do with the heart and the emotions, green can also represent jealousy and envy, you know, when we want to be in someone else's space or you know, have something that they have. And in tarot, it represents death, again, which ties in beautifully with Scorpio. So it's a really interesting connection there, I think, to see how the colors can relate to the astrology and to the, you know, the chakras.
That's fascinating.
It is, it is. And it represents a metamorphosis too, transformation from caterpillar to butterfly. So that's like that scorpionic energy where you've got the you know, the death and the rebirth, and sort of deciding about what is it in our life that needs to really die, not so much physically, but, you know, a job, a relationship, a belief, an attitude, you know, all those sorts of things. What old emotions do we need to let go of so that we can move on and have a new beginning?
Exactly. And on that note of death, which is a very Scorpio theme, it can also happen that around eclipses, there is a lot of departures, of souls depart. It's like it peaks somehow around eclipse season. And because this one is in Scorpio, right on the south node of releasing old stuff from the past, I do feel there's likely to be a lot of souls departing around this time. And that can impact some people in their personal world very directly, of course, you know. And it was brought to my attention just recently, and in the past I used to look at royal family charts a lot because they were and continue to be spectacular examples of astrology at work, because, you know, their stories were being played at large in the public field, in the public arena, and you could track the astrology and it would be absolutely spectacular, astrologically speaking. Well, this eclipse, just for interest, regardless of what we think about royal family and all of that, this eclipse is going to be right on the Queen's Saturn midheaven conjunction at 24-25 Scorpio, because the eclipse at 25 degrees of Scorpio, right on Charles's moon, and on on Charles's sun and on Andrew's moon.
Okay.
So, and we know the Queen is 96.
Yeah.
And according to reports, hasn't been in great health of late. Fair enough, at the age of 96.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm not saying she's going to pass during this period, but this is very powerful. When you get an eclipse hitting something in the chart like that, it doesn't always mean there's going to be a death, but it can mean like this is a very significant turning point or moment, you know, in an individual's life. So if any of you watching have got a significant point in your chart around that, you know, 22, because the node is at 22 of Scorpio and the moon is at 25 of Scorpio. So those degrees, Scorpio, Taurus, or Leo, Aquarius on the square points, you know, they have some impact on you. And doesn't mean tragedy, but it like some strong pivotal point, like something that can trigger and almost force something to change that needs to change.
Well, I was just thinking about the Queen. She may just purely abdicate.
Possibly.
Yeah, just step down. Yeah, had enough. Yeah.
Could do. That's right.
Mm.
So there can be some kind of big event that really gets the world's attention. I mean, there's plenty of those going on everywhere.
Pick one.
Yeah, just pick one. Exactly. And of course, then there's also themes around money with this Taurus Scorpio axis. You know,
Yeah.
and Scorpio is about power.
Yeah.
So how are we using our power? What are we learning about power? What are we seeing in the world about the misuse of power and the abuse of power, and Taurus, Scorpio control around money and finances, and so many things.
It's a very penetrating energy too,
Very.
isn't it? So it's sort of seeing right into matters, you know, into the depths of them.
Very penetrating.
So if someone has, I think we were talking about this recently, if you have Mars in Scorpio, you tend to be a bit of a researcher.
That's right. Digging deep, and don't stop till you get to the bottom, you know, of what it might, whatever that is.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a deep, powerful, transformative, at times intense, emotional too. You know, full moons are always very emotional times.
Yeah.
And in Scorpio, a water sign, like really it can trigger big emotions and deep, possibly even dark. I'm going to use the word dark in the sense of those emotions that we try to keep at bay, you know, like absolute rage or intense grief or powerful jealousy. I mean, honestly, when I was younger, I used to experience jealousy. I think most humans have at times in our life.
Yeah.
And I came to the conclusion that I think out of all the emotional states, that's probably the most painful.
It is. It is.
It's excruciating.
Things like that at high school, for example.
Yeah, when you're younger, like
Yeah.
that's right. It's excruciating. So, you know, it's often those in Scorpio, it's often those emotions of the three water signs that are really powerful and potent and what we might call dark, you know. We try to avoid, and then something like this comes along and it gets triggered, and it's really hard to hold it back because this is a strong eclipse, you know.
Yes, yeah. But how is that that Saturn conjuncting it? How does that affect it?
Oh, the square from Saturn.
Oh, sorry, the square. Sorry.
The square from
square,
Saturn in Aquarius.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. That square, you know, when you get particularly a strong planet like Saturn making a square angle to something in the chart, such as this eclipse, because it can really up the ante in terms of the pressure we feel, the sense of, like, it brings to mind what's happening in our corner of the world right now, you know, with the heavy rains over a massive area and huge flooding, like a system the likes of which we've not seen.
I know.
Hot on the tails of one that had occurred just 2 months ago. And it's like the hard reality of it, like just, you know, wishing, oh God, you know, wishing this wasn't happening again, and the devastation and destruction, but there isn't anything you can do to stop it, really.
Yeah.
That Saturn is often about just the harsh reality of a situation, but then he can call us up to, okay, we need to deal with this. Let's get real, get organized. What are we going to do about this? We have to deal with it. We can't just wish it away, you know. That's Saturn, but he doesn't make things easy, and hopefully good things can come out of it. You know, it's a kind of really powerful purging, cleansing eclipse, I feel, that's confronting, challenging, intense, but out of all those kinds of experiences that we go through, and we've all been through them in our life, haven't we?
You know? Oh yeah, definitely.
Really powerful learning and soul maturing and wisdom can come.
Yeah. I was also reading that the Saturn square might also bring feelings of loneliness or isolation. Does that weave in there for you in your thinking?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's good you brought that up. It's true. For some, it can just feel like this is just too hard. If they are alone, for example, and they're dealing with a really challenging situation, whatever that might be, could be the flooding or wherever someone is in the world where they're watching this.
Yeah.
Yeah, just that feeling of feeling so alone and desolate and not feeling any support. And Saturn is often the ruler of Capricorn.
Yes.
Feeling like it's really hard and I'm doing this alone and I have no help, I have no support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here in Australia, in Queensland, particularly the state we're in, where we've been watching the flooding around, in northern New South Wales and in Brisbane and the
Sunshine Coast and
other places. Yeah. There's just I just feel so I can see how that would fit, particularly for those people who've lost everything and they're not getting the help that they need when they need it, and how alone and isolated they would feel in having to help themselves, but it's so all the floods have been so big and so inundating and just destructive.
So destructive.
They just don't have the ability to get themselves back on their feet as quickly as what is needed. It just put a roof over their heads.
And many have not recovered or come back from the last floods, and now it's happening again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for many, this sort of an eclipse square to Saturn can feel like, for many, that they're being brought to their knees.
Yes. Yeah.
That's often a strong Saturnian experience, like just pinned up against the wall with nowhere to go and feeling like there's nowhere to go. There's no way out of this.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing that from people I know in these regions, who've not got back on their feet from the last flood, and here it's coming again, and they're feeling just absolutely broken.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's very strong
energy to work with, isn't it?
Very strong. It's but in a bigger perspective, what you were talking about with that bottle, the bigger perspective is knowing and accepting that we are all on this planet going through such an intense passage of death and rebirth, and we haven't come to the rebirth yet, and we're in that. We're like that caterpillar you mentioned, in the cocoon, and everything's turning to goo. Everything's turning.
Yep, exactly.
Everything's going into a massive disintegration, and it's very challenging.
Yeah.
We can't pretend it's not challenging, because it is.
Yeah, and every area of life,
every area.
Well, we see it in society. Maybe we don't recognize as much in ourselves, depending on our life experience, but certainly we see it outside of ourselves and what's going on in society. So much. Yeah, it's just it's amazing.
It's extraordinary. We've never lived through anything like this, and not likely to, in probably centuries, thousands of years to come. I mean, this is that big, what's going on. And it's everyone's being confronted with really deep stuff, really core life issues in their personal world, everywhere.
And it's an extended period of time too. So if it hasn't happened to some people yet, it's highly likely that something will happen.
That's right. And look, just in context, I thought to bring this in. I've mentioned this in the past, and I have to write the dates down because I forget, or the loose dates. In terms of the bigger picture, these slow moving outer planets, Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Chiron, which spend many years in a sign, in the next few years, between 2023 and 2027, all these slow-moving planets are going to go through a process of changing signs. Now, for them all to be doing that together within a relatively short time span, is pretty extraordinary. And it points to the fact that, every single thing is shifting and changing, and we're still in it, and we're not out of it yet.
That's right.
This is like, we ain't seen nothing yet. I mean, really, it's big. It's really big. And I'm not trying to terrify people. Like, it's also,
you're doing a good job.
I mean, it's also amazing and extraordinary that we're here to witness and live through this. I mean,
I know. I
I mean,
know.
it's challenging. It is like I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. This is an extraordinary time.
You know, it reminds me of when I used to go to school, we used to have, going back many decades, we used to have these little autograph books. Do you ever have those? And you get people to write things in those. And there was one that I think my grandmother told me, but maybe I got it for somewhere else, but it was lightning struck and thunder rolled and all the earth was shaking. A little pig rolled up his tail and ran to save its bacon. And it's like, that's what we're going through right now, I feel.
Yes, my God, that's so funny. And great that I love that you remember that. I'm just seeing visions of my autograph book. It had sort of gold trim on the cover and all the pages were different colors. I loved it.
Yeah, it was good. It was fun. And I don't know where it went.
No, goodness knows, exactly. So, yes, it's a huge time. I also want to just go forward one day before the eclipse. Well, actually, about a week or so ago, the Black Moon Lilith went into Cancer. And on May the 15th, the day before the eclipse, Ceres, the largest and most important of the asteroids, Ceres is the great mother goddess. She moves into the sign of Cancer, very joining with the Black Moon Lilith through the month of May. In fact, they'll form an exact conjunction at 4 degrees of Cancer on May the 26th. For those who are interested in those kind of goddess feminine archetypes and the asteroids and so on, I'm very intrigued by that, and we'll be paying close attention to it. And, you know, Cancer is the sign of mother and family and home and our personal life and food and sustenance and warmth and affection and feeling emotionally held and safe and so on and so on. So these are going to be big themes. And I think, you know, while over the next few months, while Ceres and the Black Moon Lilith go through Cancer, you know, we're feeling this on a very personal, home front, family level. You know, people are going through things in a very personal way. It's a very personal energy.
Can I ask you a question about the Black Moon? Because I was wondering, when did it actually become significant in astrology?
Good question. In the West, shall we say, it was only a few decades ago.
Okay.
And it first sort of came to our attention in Europe. Some German and French astrologers started looking at the Black Moon Lilith and sort of locating it in charts and working with it. And I first came across it when I went to an astrology conference in Melbourne, maybe 20 years ago, and there was a German astrologer there and she was presenting a lecture on it. And I didn't know anything about it, but I just had this I read the little blurb and went, oh, that looks interesting. And away I went. It was just revelatory for me. It was like I found the missing piece of my chart that just explained a lot of things.
Ah, yeah, because it's not actually a planet, is it?
It's not a planet. It's like an energy vortex that's locatable. You know, it's a known phenomenon in the astronomical world. It's to do with the orbit of the moon as it's, you know, going around the Earth and so on. But it's not the dark phase of the moon. It's something else. Yeah, so it's not an actual physical body that you can see with a telescope. But it has a lot to do with the repressed feminine and our deep connection to the power of and the mystery of the divine feminine.
So it's really playing a very strong role at the moment, isn't it? Because I think that women are, or men with, you know, with their female side, their female energy as well, is sort of reawakening, isn't it? Women are, you know, returning to women's circles. And
that's right.
Then, you know, a couple of decades ago, we had the sensitive new age man emerge, you know, or,
that's right.
New age guy, and it was just like, I mean, it's great to see, but I wish it'd hurry up a lot, go a lot faster.
Yeah. I think because we've got like thousands of years of that old paradigm to sort of undo, if you like. So it
takes time. Yeah,
it does take time. That's right. It's a process. Yeah.
But meanwhile, I think it's important that we, that female energy comes back, and if we
Absolutely.
can't find it in the world, create our own little tribe of it to anchor it.
Absolutely. And I think personally that's probably the strongest key for this passage we're going through, and creating a new earth and a new world on the other side of this, which is already happening.
Yeah.
But we're still not out of the old one yet.
No.
So it's about that rebalancing of the masculine, feminine, yin yang, because it's become it's so out of balance. We need to, and it's not about a blending of the gender and polarities. It's about the two polarities in this beautiful dance together, instead of being like that.
Yeah.
That's how I see it anyway. Yeah. And we've become so far from that.
Yeah.
And so the black moon in the chart's got a lot to do with our experience of how the feminine's been held down, repressed, denied, vilified, demonized, abused. And when I say the feminine, I personally include women, the earth herself, and also the dark-skinned peoples of this planet, the custodians and their knowledge of earth and nature and so on. There's a lot in that. Now she's in Cancer for these 9 months, and it's interesting that Ceres has just gone into Cancer.
Yeah.
Great mother.
So how long will it stay in there?
Well, the black moon Lilith is there for 9 months.
Yeah.
I haven't checked to see how long, because sometimes Ceres goes through a retrograde phase.
Yes.
It'll be at least a few months.
Yes.
I haven't checked exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
That is interesting. And so there can be issues around food, and
things that nurture us.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. Well, that was a lot. We'll keep on going. And
well, it's very interesting, and I'm hoping that people watching also find it interesting.
Yeah, I hope so too. And I hope it's interesting and helpful,
and expands. Expands. Yeah.
So then on May the 18th, so 2 days after the eclipse, which means, all this is happening around the eclipse. The eclipse chart also has this Mars conjunct Neptune, which is exact on the 18th. So that's what I mentioned before about the Pisces water energy is still very present, because Mars is still going through Pisces, and Mars will leave. Many people will feel relieved. Will be leaving Pisces on May the 25th and go into Aries, which is his own sign. Mars will just go fantastic. Planets love being in their own sign.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Mars with Neptune, which is, they're currently moving together. They're just exact on the 18th. When Mars is in Pisces, because Mars is the ruler of Aries, the planet of action, the warrior energy, he can feel a bit helpless almost, in Pisces, because Pisces is all about letting go and emptying out, spiritual surrender, spiritual connection, thy will, not my will, And Mars is all about, no, it's my will, I know what I'm doing and I do my thing. And in Pisces, if we were to just speak as a metaphor, it's like the warrior has having to perhaps rest, lay down his sword, recover, surrender, seek spiritual guidance before taking action, feel that attunement, that intuitive attunement before just charging into battle. But I think resting is a good metaphor, because once he goes into Aries, he'll be ready for action. And if he's gained some wisdom from the 6 weeks Pisces phase, and had rest maybe, and cleaned his sword and repaired his weapons, and had a long bath in an Epsom salts bath, and recovered a bit, then and learn to listen and tune in, to guidance that's wanting to guide him in the right way. Then once he goes in, to kind of take this on board, folks, once he goes into Aries on the 25th, it'll be all systems go.
Yeah. I'm just getting this image of a hot iron and going, you know.
That's right. That's right.
So it's like, okay, hold up there, buddy. You know.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, just wait, hang. That's
Just
right.
idle for a while.
Yeah. But I think it's also contributing to the weather and the and the feeling of overwhelm and just exhaustion that everyone's feeling, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I think about, I mean, it's very hampering. You know, it's because I think about going outside twice. I think about doing washing, going to the shop. My normal activities are, you know, curtailed.
That's right.
Just, you know, because it's so wet.
And there's this kind of oppressive energies, this massive, you know, low. It's hanging over us days and days and days and days and days.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yes.
So,
all right. Then we get a bit of a change of energy when the sun leaves Taurus and goes into Gemini.
Yes.
Yes, on the 21st. And that kind of just immediately lightens things up a bit. You know, Gemini, air sign, the twins, the mind, communication. It has a much lighter, more kind of playful energy.
Yeah.
Usually it does. It definitely does after Taurus. But remember, Mercury's retrograde in Gemini.
So do you think maybe that might slow it down a bit or make it a little bit more present? Because Gemini just flip, you know, like the dragonfly and the lily pad.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stay long enough to actually stay still long enough to actually integrate the information that it's collecting and trying to spread.
Yes.
You know, it just passes it on. It doesn't actually take time to learn from it.
Yeah, that's right. It's a mutable sign. It's a mutable air. So it's got that light, you know, think of feathers moving around in the air, you know, light and always moving, always moving. I mean, you'll see, you know, these signs express themselves physically. You'll see like a Gemini might be really fidgety, you know, even just sitting still can be challenging. No, I'm not, please, if you're a Gemini, I'm not saying all Geminis do this, but you see the clues, you see the little behaviors that are automatic, you know, and Gemini has to be moving.
Yeah.
Because the mind's always moving.
Yes, it's the mind. Yeah. My mother's a Gemini and she, you know, when you're having you can't have a deep conversation with her because she's got so much going on up here, you know, almost like a bee, you know, buzzing around.
That's right. I mean, some Geminis are quite grounded, of course, but that depends on what else is going on in the chart.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Help ground and integrate that energy. But you know, Gemini is where we're incredibly curious. We love learning. We love communicating. And I've found every year when we go through the period of the sun in Gemini, I get really like busy. All of a sudden, my work, you know, people are contacting me. People want classes. They want readings. They want sessions. You know, there's just a lot going on, and there's a lot of communication and meeting with friends and catching up with people.
Yeah, socializing. Yeah.
Socializing. It just gets very busy, which Gemini loves. That's what Gemini thrive.
They do. They can get peopled out.
They can.
But it's rare.
That's right. If they've got a fair bit of water in their chart, you know, they go, oh, that's enough now. I need right. But generally that's that. They love that. So that can really help to lighten things up a bit. And then, as I said, on the 25th, Mars will go into Aries. But remember, Mercury is retrograde. It's still just in the early days of a retrograde, 3-week retrograde period. And he turned retrograde around almost 5 degrees of Gemini. And on May the 23rd, he'll actually retrograde back into Taurus. And it gets to around about 25 degrees of Taurus, which is the degree of this eclipse, 25 Taurus, Scorpio. So it gets back to that degree, and then we'll turn direct again on June 3rd. So that's certainly adding to the to what we're experiencing, like on top of everything else, and Mercury's retrograde.
Yes, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. What's that?
Thank you, planets.
I know. Thank you. Thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you. Great.
Oh, dear.
But yeah, I also always want to reinforce it for all of the frustrations and glitches that happen when Mercury's retrograde, because he's, you know, in mythology, Mercury, Hermes, he's cheeky, he's mischievous, he's naughty,
Yes.
gets up to mischief. He's a mischief maker.
Trickster.
Trickster.
Yeah.
That's right. You know, the Joker, all of those sorts of images. But it always is really helpful to remember that Mercury retrograde is fantastic for research, for study, for planning, for preparing, not necessarily acting on things. Like I've just had to do yesterday, just was so much happening. I had to reschedule some workshops I had in place. I thought it's just not going to work. I contacted the people who were booked in. Every single one of them said, "Oh, thank God, thank you. I'm so glad you did that." I just knew. I thought, no, we can't do this. I have to change these dates. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
So, and this is Mercury retrograde. We have to be prepared to adjust and change, particularly in Gemini.
Yes, exactly.
You know?
Yeah, because so many things just happen so fast.
That's right. So fast. So he will then go back on the 23rd into Taurus. And through until June the 3rd, when he'll turn direct at 25, 26 of Taurus. So that can be a good time to review finances and so on, you know, practical things for that period, those 2 weeks or so. No, about 10 days while he's in Taurus, retrograding in Taurus. Yeah. What else? So Mars in Aries on the 25th, great. I mean, remember, Jupiter's gone into Aries now. Just a few days ago, Jupiter hit 0 degrees of Aries. And that's a major story too. You know, Jupiter's in a sign for a year, has a 12-year cycle. So it was around 2010, 2011 that Jupiter was last in Aries. Jupiter, the planet of all things big, you know, the ruler of Sagittarius, you know, so it's a planet you would resonate with very much, that Jupiter energy.
Yeah. You
know, the Sages live a big life.
Yeah.
That's right. It's a big life.
Oh, with my moon in Gemini to boot, it's like, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. Always a lot happening, and everything's always changing and moving, and lots of variety. Yeah.
Yes.
So this planet of all things big, it's a planet of philosophy, of truth, of the search, the seeking for higher truth, higher knowledge and wisdom. Wisdom not in a Saturnian way, but wisdom in the Jupiter way of like knowledge, truth, looking, seeking, the seeker, searching. In Aries, how does Jupiter go about that process in Aries? With boldness, with guts, with courage, with daring. It just charges in, you know, and just says, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah. And you just do. It's very much action.
That's right.
Yeah, in a big way.
So that's right. So we're in for a period now where that Jupiter energy's really kicked into Aries. And on the 25th, Mars will go there as well. So Jupiter and Mars, two very high energy planets, will be in a very high energy sign. So we're sort of coming out of that phase when a lot of planets were in Pisces for ages, it seemed.
I think I was reading too that Venus is conjuncting Chiron in Aries as well.
She is.
Yeah. And I thought, well, that's an interesting thing to happen for Aries, you know, like issues around maybe because, you know, Chiron, the wound, and Venus is, well,
that's right.
You know, like looking at like self-worth or.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, those sorts of things.
Absolutely. Venus has been in Aries now for nearly 2 weeks, and Chiron's been in Aries since about 2018 for 9 years. So, and then we'll have Mars and Jupiter come into Aries. It's interesting, you know, because some months ago we had a lot of planets in Aquarius, and we've come out of a phase, or coming out of a phase when a lot of planets are in Pisces. moving into a phase when there'll be quite a lot of planets in Aries. So you sort of see these shifts of energy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, the other thing I was reading, like that Venus conjunct Chiron in Aries can also bring up feelings of not being wanted or needed or feeling useful. And I think sometimes that happens. I mean, that happens to everybody at some stage, doesn't it? We're always checking our self-worth.
Yes.
Looking at, well, does anyone appreciate what I do? Those sorts of things. And when you get that appreciation, it's like, wow, that's really nice. That's really great.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Everybody needs that, don't they? Certain, recognition, appreciation, validation, and so on. That's right. So, yeah, when a planet joins Chiron, it can really highlight and bring to the surface and to the fore themes around self-love. And it can also, of course, have an impact on relationships with relationships in general, even for women, relationships with women in their life, daughters, sisters, girlfriends, partners of any gender, it doesn't matter. Venus is a principle of love. And of course, the first port of call for us to really learn about is self-love, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Actually, Aries,
Yeah, because it's all about your personal identity. And
that's right.
Yeah. But I'm just thinking, I have not come across anywhere yet, anyway, where Chiron has a color relating to it. So I must do a bit of research and get my Mars in Scorpio in action for our next episode.
Dude, that's so interesting, Cheryl, because when I color code planets, for the charts that I print out, I've always made Chiron green. And for the main reason is, I didn't want it to be the same color as other planets. Yeah. It's just a way of color coding, just by holding that up, you can see. So the program I have, I can use whatever colors I want for the different planets. And, like you, I like to associate colors with things because they're all energetic connections. So green just felt right because Chiron is the healer extraordinaire. And he was discovered in the sign of Taurus, earth sign, that I do associate a lot with green, the green of the earth. And so I've always I don't know whether that would be correct, say, in the Orosoma system, whether they even talk about Chiron. I studied Orosoma years ago, but that I didn't continue, so I've forgotten a lot of it.
Yeah. No, I haven't come across it on anywhere, actually. I've done a bit of, digging around on the internet, different people's ideas about colors representing signs and planets. But this is the one I've had looked at recently. I don't know if people can see, but this is all about the bottles relating to the different signs, which is interesting. But I'm imagining, I don't know this, but I imagine that Uranus in color systems would be represented by orange, because orange represents shock in the Orosoma system.
It does.
Shocking, it's like blows things apart. And I think the shock bottle is called the Humpty Dumpty bottle as well.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
It just blows it all apart and can't put Humpty back together again,
Well, that's kind of what we're going through.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and it's interesting for me to see when we're going through these things, what colors actually come out in fashion and in interior design. I've always followed that as well. So, it's and a lot lately has in interior design had gone into back to the neutral colors, whites.
That's right.
Silvers, grey, pale greys, that sort of thing. Which in Orosoma represents I can represent tears, right? Grief and sadness, those sorts of things. And I'm also thinking it's almost too like the pearl of great price, where you cry all these tears, but out of that comes that pearl that you learn from the experience.
Well, astrologically, that pearlescent energy and white and silver is related to the moon and Cancer.
Yeah. So your emotions. Yeah.
That's right.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
That's so interesting. But I've always associated Uranus with more of an electric blue color, sky god. Yeah. And that electric, really strong. And I see that a lot of people with strong Aquarius energy often wear a lot of blue and love to have blue around them and so on.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating, really fascinating. So I actually, when you held up that sheet, what struck me immediately was the olive green, because the green I use in my charts for Chiron is more kind of olivey, more like the olive green, leaning in, not sort of like a bright leaf green.
Yes.
Now, that's just my own personal sense of it.
Do you mean the emerald green, the deeper green?
No, olive.
Olive
more, and I don't know if that's right, but that's my sense of it.
Well, that's curious too, because olive green in this system represents hope and leading from the feminine side through our feelings. It's leadership, but through the feminine leadership through the feelings. So
interesting.
I'd love to see that in some of our politicians.
Because I remember I used to often choose bottles with olive green in it. Somehow would often be drawn to that.
Yeah. So it represented as hope. And I think if you think about healing with Chiron, it is about the hope to be whole.
Yes.
Healing is about wanting to be whole. And you hope that
exactly.
Yeah.
And those words all have an entomological, there's entomology, I'll say it that way, around that word, isn't there? Like healing, whole, and holy.
Yes.
And Chiron's very much about that. There's something very sacred about Chiron's healing power and the wounds, the holy wound, the sacred wound. Yeah. And pardon me, those notifications jumping in. So I think, while Chiron's in Aries over this 9-year period, one of the things I see about that is absolutely it's healing the wounds of the masculine in us all and the wounded masculine on the planet, but it's also moving into new directions with healing for us all individually, like trying new systems of healing, opening up to new possibilities of healing, new blazing new trails in the arenas of healing, and what does that look like? And having the courage to try something new and something different.
Yes.
Which is Aries.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see various new healing systems, coming into play, in the early phases, and I can see how they will evolve.
That's right.
Yeah. To go from
it can even be like the healer or someone, your doctor or your dentist that you've been going to see for years and years and years suddenly is no longer working. They're not available anymore, and you have to find someone new. It's like we're kind of pushed into a new direction in some way.
Yeah.
Or in terms of more holistic healing, could be like just trying a whole new modality or a whole new system, or learning a new modality of healing and medicine. I think
you go on.
That's a kind of a general theme. One of the general themes I would say about Chiron in Aries during this phase of time.
Yeah, you've got me thinking now. I'm looking down because I'm looking through my Aura Soma book. I'm so curious. My Mars and Scorpio can't wait to get into it and look at this, because I'm looking at the green and red together in the bottle, and that because you were talking about representing Chiron with green and red, and it's the Maid Marian bottle.
Wow.
So it's about awakening of the heart.
Yes, the green and the energy of the red.
Yes, and I think Aries needs a little bit of that push from time to time, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's amazing because you brought up before Venus conjunct Chiron in Aries. Aries is a red color. The only color I've ever associated with Aries and Mars is red. And Venus is very much the greens, that energy of the heart, and pink. Venus is very green and pink, these two kind of different expressions of love.
Yeah, well, pink is the ascended red.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Oh, this is lovely. This is great. Yeah. So I hope that's interesting for you, everyone. But we've kind of offered on. It's not a tangent at all.
No, it's actually just bringing more information in from different systems to help people relate to the astrology, basically.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And all of these things, it's all vibration and resonance, and everything vibrates and resonates and is interconnected.
Mm.
So just to kind of complete, so take us to the end of the month.
Yes.
Venus moves will leave Aries and go into Taurus on May the 29th, and she'll be happy because Taurus is her sign. Venus rules Taurus. So we're going to have Mars in his own sign of Aries and Venus in her own sign of Taurus. That's great.
Yeah, we're going to have some happy times, maybe.
That's, yes. But it's like when a planet's in its own sign, it can just operate as its pure natural self.
Yes.
And it's empowered, it's really empowered to be fully who and what it is, and to express that and be that in our own life and experience. But on the same day, Mars will be conjunct Jupiter at 3 degrees of Aries. That's a big combination of Aries energy. Mars conjunct Jupiter. That's very dynamic. And that leads us into the new moon then on May the 30th at 9 degrees of Gemini.
Yay!
So it feels like there's this intensity. Well, it not just feels like it is, but I can feel it as I came to the end of the month, this intensity of May. It's so intense. It's so strong. It's almost like hang in there, folks. This too shall pass. We will get through all of this, and much will happen in the process that we'll come to terms with and process,
Got to take you down to the depths first.
That's right. It's very strong.
Like
and
deep sea diving.
Yeah. Yeah. So then the new moon in Gemini, and then on the 3rd, Mercury will go direct again. So yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. What a time to be alive.
I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
No, it seems pretty clear we signed up for this. So, we all have a role to play, don't we?
Yeah, we certainly do. Yeah.
So sometimes we raise our hands to the heaven and say, why me? Why this? But here we are.
So for people who'd like to know what's coming up after this in the next episode, when we're going to talk about that new moon in Gemini and many other things I know,
yes.
Do remember to subscribe, click subscribe, and remember to tap the bell so that next to the subscribe button so that you get the notification. And if you enjoyed this, and if you enjoyed the inclusion of the colors as well, please let us know. Tell us in the comments. We'd love to get that feedback, and because it's just another way to help people relate to it, because astrology as a system can be quite overwhelming to come to understand it for people who are stepping out, and I know that myself. So if you can find things that relate to things, then it helps you remember as well.
Yes, it does. That's true.
It makes sense of everything. Yeah.
It does make sense of things. Yeah.
Yeah. So been a pleasure again, Babula. Thank you for
me too, Cheryl.
Yeah. And everyone, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.